Hi, I'm Kevin Klein from the Winnipeg Sun. Joining me today to kick off a brand new program that we're going to do, a video podcast, if you will, is Royce Koop, a well-known political figure here in the city of Winnipeg and all across Manitoba, quite frankly, and a
Oh, wow.
professor of political sciences. That's correct?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and we're very proud to have Royce as part of the Winnipeg Sun family. And Royce and I had some discussions a couple of times to talk about how we should do a video podcast and do a roundup of what's happened in politics the last week. So I don't want to go and spend a lot of time on the introduction. That's what we're going to do for you, and we want to get right into things. And the thing that I wanted to ask you about, Royce, because a lot of people still ask me about it, and I've shared some opinions is the leadership for the PC party of Manitoba, which really will be longer than Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the leadership that doesn't seem to end.
Yeah, Kevin, let me say, I'm really proud to be a part of the Sun team as well, and really nice of you to say that. I guess about a week and a half ago, we saw the first event that featured the two leadership candidates, Wally and Obby. It's great, go together really well, the two names. And I don't know if we're probably not going to have many more opportunities to see them together. Like, I don't know if there are any debates scheduled. So this was actually an important event to get to know these candidates. There's this great political scientist. I don't want to be too wonky here, but he would talk about elections. We always think about elections that they're about winning and losing. And what this guy argued is that elections are also about relationship building. When you run for office, you're building a relationship with voters. You win. What kind of relationship are you going to have? What are you going to be known for? What's that going to look like? And I think that applies to leadership contests, as well. And we really saw that the kinds of relationships that these candidates were trying to build with PC party members. For Wally, pretty clearly conservative person, conservative beliefs. He's got kind of the style. He looks like the kind of guy you walk into a Tory meeting, you see people like that. The leather jacket is a great touch. I thought, this guy would just kind of, fit most party members like an old glove. Like they'd be very familiar with it. Audie has different strengths. Better speaker, more polished. He's got some experience under his belt as a politician now, and he's got a kind of unique experience, a really big name recognition, and I think positive name recognition. But you can see how they're both starting to build this relationship with party members, presenting themselves in different ways, presenting their strengths. And it was I think, a really nice contrast. It's hard to say, one person won, one person lost. I think it's better to say that they're presenting very different profiles, different strategies, building different kinds of relationships with BC party members.
I agree with that, but I'm going to put in my own spin on this because I was there and I wrote about the fact that it was quite interesting after the Sun had covered the whole rental car kerfuffle that happened that they still haven't really addressed. And interesting that when they introduced all the former MLAs, they didn't introduce me as a former MLA. They didn't even mention that I was in the room. And I really got the feeling talking to people afterwards that they want to know what people are going to do about the issues that are going on with the party, and I have a real concern about that. And I think that what we're seeing is you're right. They're doing the typical political stuff, right? Shaking hands, kissing babies, promising the world, oh, I can help, I'm going to bring the party together. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But in reality, the party is fractured. And the party is very fractured. We have the CO silica things that's still being investigated that the premier's office telling me will be made public as soon as it comes out, and they're waiting as well. So that's going to come out. You had the election debacle and all of the bad decisions that were made during the election process. Now you have the invoices and the questionable invoices. You had the last leadership election. Nobody are talking. Neither one of them really are talking about those issues that have been going on. And dig a little deeper. I mean, Bobby Khan openly admitted, and not at that event, but he had to on paperwork, he's involved in a major lawsuit with a business partner of his, where it's upwards of $500,000 that he hasn't paid to this lady. He loses that. And that's another mark on the party. So I'm really torn about how this leadership is going. Yeah, they're trying to build those relationships, but I think a lot of people have just really had it with the PC party right now, and they're looking for it to rise from the ashes.
Yeah, I'd imagine that both candidates are hearing those kinds of things from party members. How are you going to reform the party? Lost the last election. What are the changes that you're going to make? I know that Wally did make some comments, but I think they were at a pretty high level. There weren't that kind of specific proposals about how to reform the party. Also, Wally came out against the party stand, the whole stand firm thing in the last campaign. He was opposed to that, and so you can see there is value to presenting yourself as a party outsider, as someone that can change things, someone that can fix things moving forward. Yeah, I mean the lawsuit, Avi's lawsuit. You want to be aware of things that are going to be the NDP is going to use against you in the future.
Mhm.
That's something PC party members want to keep in mind. They want to balance that against the what they see as strengths of him, and in the same way Wally has some downsides. Party members kind of make those decisions. They balance the strengths and the weaknesses. That lawsuit is something I would keep in mind when they're doing that balancing.
So let's talk about the party members that are going to be voting because they do have to go out and sell memberships. That's what this is all about. And I agree. Abby has that name recognition, but from a football perspective, and when I was at the event, and he talked an awful lot about his football. But when I look at the rules that are with this particular leadership, that I understand people 14 and up are allowed to vote. You don't have to be a Canadian citizen. You just have to buy a membership. I have problem with that, and especially after what's happened federally with the investigations of Chinese involvement in elections. And I'm not trying to start a conspiracy theory, but this is how these things happen. Like, I mean, you could have a group or an activist group or anybody put together sell a number of memberships to take this thing over that really truly aren't members or follow conservative beliefs and values, and that could change the party even more, and that bothers me. And am I right to be bothered by that, or am I just being outside the circle?
Oh, yeah, yes and no. I think that if you went up to most Manitobans on the street, just random people, and said, 14-year-old non-citizens can vote in this race, they'd be surprised. I think most people don't realize that that's the case. Party races are not elections. You can choose different criteria. You can let young people vote. You can let non-citizens, just permanent residents, for example, vote. It can be challenging. It does, I think, open up these races to more abuse, or that there's more potential for abuse in these situations. And the party needs to be aware of that, and they need to be concerned about that. I think this is a good committee that's running the race. Brad Zander is the chair. He's going to do a great job, and they need to be aware of, the possibility that that could happen. Second point is that it does make it easier for outside groups to come in, join the party, and support a candidate. And so you can get this situation where you've got lots of new people swamping the party to select a leadership candidate, maybe not old time Tories. It might not even be that ideologically conservative, but this is the way it's been in Canada for over 100 years. Parties have these big, wide open leadership races. One way to win is for candidates to reach out to people that weren't previously party members and to win on that basis. So the downside of that is, as you say, you can get, quote unquote outsiders, people that are not kind of long-standing Tories that can play a deciding role. The good thing is that it is a way to expand the tent. Parties can, and potential leadership candidates can really expand the party by bringing new people in. And then the hope is that once you bring them in through a leadership race, then you kind of motivate them to stay. They'll volunteer. They might run for office. They'll run in a subsequent election. So yeah, I would be cautious about the opening up this race to big groups of people. Be aware of the potential of abuse, But yeah, no, I think this is partly the way politics is done in Canada. You bring outsiders into the party in order to win.
Yeah. Not that it's right, but that is the way we do things. Let's move on from that because I mean this as we talked about at the start, this leadership campaign is going to go on until spring, and then if a federal election is actually called in the spring, the party has to extend it longer. From what I understand, they'll have to probably go and wait until June before they have another new leader. So we'll have lots of opportunity to talk about this, and I think there's lots of opinions going on around it. I'd like to talk a little bit about which seemed to fly under the radar of most media throughout the city was the bills and the legislation that the NDP put through as an omnibus bill, and it just all packaged a bunch of these things together, including the one that doesn't allow private business to continue to work when there's a strike. They can't bring in, as they call scab labor. Um, as a business person and a small business person and somebody who's been involved in corporations for years, it would make me think twice, three times about coming to Winnipeg or Manitoba to establish a company or a facility or a manufacturing facility that typically is unionized. Was this too far for the NDP?
I don't know. I think this is the kind of legislation that you expect to get from an NDP government these days. As everyone says, elections have consequences, and they want a majority, and you do expect to see those sorts of things. I think the concerning thing is the omnibus legislation, where the government is packing a whole bunch of things into one big bill. It makes it hard to scrutinize. It makes it harder for the opposition, people in committee, those legislative committees. There's limited time for people to speak to bills if there's public hearings. These omnibus bills are not anti-democratic, they're kind of undemocratic in that they thwart the scrutiny function of legislatures. It lets governments get away with stuff quicker than they should. And I really disapprove of these bills. If you've got a majority government, you can get your bills through. It
Mhm.
just takes a little longer. It's a little harder. You have to endure criticism. You might have to make some amendments. These omnibus bills are democratically no good to me. But of course, it's not just the NDP. I think that the NDP's bill is particularly egregious, but it's not just the NDP. All sorts of parties, including the previous PC party, did these kinds of omnibus bills. I really wish that we would get away from this in Canada and in the provinces.
Yeah, well, it's part of the political game, I guess, right? And that's what always bothered me being at City Hall and being at the province is that it really does become a game, and they'll drive as much through as they can, especially in the early part of their term, because they don't have to worry as much, and people have short memories, and I think that that's why these things happen. But time
If
will tell, right? I mean, they're still in a very much of a honeymoon period right now. But I can tell you from my perspective, I think that what they put through for the labor legislation is going to hurt Manitoba. I think it's going to make our corporations think twice. You're trying to attract a number of transportation companies and such to Centerport and Winnipeg. You're looking at bringing in more capacity to Churchill. Again, these are big jobs. They are for the most part unionized jobs, and corporations have to consider the risk when they're coming in to a place where you know that if a strike does happen, you're shut down. And I think that that's going to come back to haunt the Manitoba government in years to come.
Yeah, I think that if there is going to be something that's particularly controversial and contentious, then it becomes all the more important for it to stand alone. For
Yeah.
the government to propose it, to defend it, to say this is why we want this. These are the arguments for it. And even if you get kind of beaten up in the process, that's okay. You've got a majority government. The next election, not 3 years away. There's no reason to combine all these things together. So yeah, I mean, putting a bunch of innocuous legislation together is to save time is kind of one thing, but if there's bills that actually deserve debate, deserve scrutiny, these omnibus bills become much more egregious, I think.
Yeah. But again, it's a political move, right? Because you know that the other party, the opposition party, can hold certain bills back. And there's probably
Yeah.
bills they had made promises to their supporters to get through. As we talked about, there are consequences when the elections end, and they probably made commitments. And this was the easy way for them to get them put through without having the opposition pull those bills aside. Putting Canadian
Yeah.
politics aside, oh, sorry, go ahead.
But I mean, if a bill gets held up, it's not the end of the world. The election is not, it's 3 years away. So yeah, I mean, this sort of thing. And then, when the parties in opposition, they criticize these bills and then they get in and they do the exact same thing. Wouldn't it be refreshing if parties actually kind of took a hit, stuck by what they said when they were in opposition, and actually did away with these things?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. All right. Well, listen, this was interesting. It's good to have the back and forth and ask the questions because I think people are afraid to ask certain questions or make certain, share certain thoughts. But it's a conversation, and people should be having more conversations, especially about politics. So I look forward to doing this every week with you. Hopefully, we won't run out of material. I don't think we will.
No, there's always something happening. I don't think so.
Well, thank you very much for your time. We look forward to your column in the Winnipeg Sun on a weekly basis, and we'll look forward to doing a political roundup here with you on a weekly basis as well. Royce Koop, columnist in the Winnipeg Sun and a professor of political sciences.
Thanks so much, Kevin.